So this will be just a little bit of ramble, and then I'm going to talk about something specific. You can see the state that the orc flyer's in. This is after the part 1 of the public video. I'm pretty happy with it. After I did the video, I went in with some additional shades and just started playing with more experimenting, just putting on some shades and some contrast paint and things like that, just to see the effects, because I'm gonna end up overpainting most of this. But you can see just some of the areas where I did some experimentation, like the metallic there. I mean, that's kind of janky looking, but I was actually trying some things out, working with seeing, could I use just plain water to rub away some of the paint after it dried? How would that look? And that's pretty much how it looks. I had to do it real quick, but just gave me something to build on, experimenting. So I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out so far. Now, one thing I've got in the works is I've got these Tempesta Scions. They're basically Astra Militarum, a special Astra Militarum unit, and I think they just look cool. I'm going to be painting these. You may see these in a Patreon video, because my plan is this is going to be kind of like the Arminger video, in that what I'm going to talk about is not really going to be about the painting of these. It's going to be less of a whine. My plan is I'll be painting these in the background and showing the colors that I'm using, but I'm just going to stick to a simple formula. In fact, for the most part, I'm going to be maybe changing up a few things in terms of the cloth, but for the most part, I'm just going to be following the video that Duncan Rhodes posted when he was still at GW about painting these. But my plan is to talk about just playing with toy soldiers since I was a kid, and just kind of talk about memories of that, and just kind of ramble a little bit. It probably won't be interesting to too many people, but I want to do it. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I've just been unwilling to do it up until now, because I thought, well, that's not going to be a successful video. But no, I don't care. I'm just going to talk about toy soldiers and why they're fun to paint for me. And I thought these would be a great basis for painting them. All of them but one have on a face mask, so I made it easy for myself. One of them, let's see, which guy is it? It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are they all here? Yeah. Oh, it's this guy. This guy's the commander. He's going to have a big jacket hanging on his shoulders, because everybody goes into combat with a giant leather jacket hanging off of their shoulders. But he's going to be wearing a beret, and it's going to happen to be a maroon beret. And I one of those for a few years. Here's his big old giant jacket. And it's going to have a big chain that's going to be hanging around his neck. I guess he's trying to look all gangster or something. I don't know. But it's not real plausible from a reality standpoint, but it's going to be fun to paint. But that's, and when this is going to come out, I'm tentatively thinking that this will be the video that comes after the Orc Flyer, because I'll be working on this mostly on Friday nights and some Sunday afternoons. The idea being that I'll have the footage done, and then can just patch it together and put a voiceover over it. What I may do is, you may see some Patreon videos where I'm actually talking about it while I'm doing it, even though I'll later use that same footage in the video. So you may get double use out of, double duty out of that. I saw, if you watch Trovarian, his painting channel, he has, what he'll do is he'll do Patreon videos where they're like 45 minutes or so of him painting it, and then he'll take those videos and condense it down into like a 15-minute video and talk over that. So I thought, let me try seeing how that works, and we'll see. What I'm going to talk about now is just the way I like to paint things like the engines. You've got this large chunk of engine back here, and then of course, as I talked about in a previous video, this part's going to go hook onto it like that, something like that. However it hooks on there. I can't see what I'm doing, but trust me, it works. But I'm going to have that painted, and I want it generally silver. I want it to be metallic, generally silver. And then I'll probably come over the top of it with some something to look like a heat effect or something like that. But sometimes I've had some folks tell me that they have trouble painting. How does this stupid thing go on? There we go. I've had some trouble. People tell me they have trouble with doing their metallics so that they don't look streaky, that there's not a lot of brush strokes on them. So I thought I would show a method that I use that is really simple, but I think it works really well. It avoids obvious brush strokes, and I think what it does is it imparts more of a metallic look to it than just using, just painting it on traditionally with a brush and just painting. You'll see what I mean. Now, for painting large areas of metallics, I like to have them start off as black. This is just using Vallejo black. This one, just their model color black. And you don't have to have it black, but you'd be surprised at how the underlying coat will show through with metallics. And oddly, metallics, when they're over black, a black coat, instead of being desaturated like a lot of colors would, it tends to make them shinier. I heard someone give an explanation in terms of how it works with light and your eye and all of these other, really impressive sounding things. And to be honest, I don't remember any of it, other than the fact that somebody said there was a reason for it. But while I don't know why it works, I do know that in my own practical application of paints, that it does work. So I'm going to give this a rough coat of black. I'll put it on real thin, let it dry, go with another coat. And the other good thing about using black is you'll see with the painting technique that I'm going to do in applying the paint, and it's not going to be anything that you've not seen before, but gives me something to talk about. If you miss any areas or if you don't get complete coverage, it tends to be in the shadows, and it works really well with metallics to just have those shadow areas as black. I could go with this brown, but it would just be kind of odd for any of the shadows. So let me get this painted up, and I'm also going to paint this part of the engine here. I may do these. We'll see how I feel. So let me take a minute and do that. Sorry for going out of focus, but I'll get this on here, and then we'll head to the metallics. Interesting. I painted this with the Vallejo black, which is normally flat black, satin black, but the bottle is almost empty. I mean, there's literally it's just blowing bubbles out of it, but I had enough to use, and I thinned it with some water. Dry glossy. That's different. I mean, for my purposes, it doesn't matter. I'm just pointing this out because I just kind of find it interesting. Now, for the rest of the video, I'm just going to focus on painting this part. I've got those painted black, and they're still drying, but whatever I do on here, I'm going to do on there. The only exception may be is if you decide, that you want some parts on the engine, like if you wanted this to be kind of a brass color, I normally do that after I do all of the things that I'm going to show on here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it a darker silver. I'm going to do some dry brushing, then a shade, maybe some sponging. I'm just going to kind of make it up as I go along. That's something that every now and then somebody will say, how do you do this? You know, how do you do this technique or that technique? And sometimes I have to tell them, it just depends on the day. There are so many ways that I've done things over the years that sometimes I'll do something the same way 10 different times in a row, and then another time I'll go, oh yeah, I remember when I did it this way, or hey, I've never done it this way, let me try this. So to me, modeling is an ongoing experiment. I think I've talked about that before. So this is going to be just a lot of stuff I've done before, maybe a different order, but just the goal is, I heard Lincoln Wright quoting Ko Yokoyama, and I think I'm getting this right, but he just basically said, Ko Yokoyama told him, just make it look cool. That's the thing. If you're not familiar with them, Ko Yokoyama is the guy who invented the machining krieger genre, and Lincoln Wright is someone who had worked for him in the studio and is now producing his own material, his own books and stuff like that. Anyway, let me go on and having the goal of making it look cool. Now what I've got here in my palette is some of this Too Thin Coats Surcoat Silver. It's basically the equivalent of lead belcher. It's just kind of a darker silver, not a real dark silver, but a darker silver. I want it to be a little darker, so I'm just going to stick the end of my brush in this black that I've already been using, and I'm just going to mix that in, which is going to darken it down some. Don't be afraid to mix regular paints into your metallics. As long as there's more of the metallic than there is the regular paint, it's going to retain a metallic look. And because I'm going to do some dry brushing and stuff over it later, if it does lose a little bit of the metallic look, I'm going to bring it back. Now, when you try to paint on, just in a traditional brush painting kind of way, you often get paint brush marks left into whatever it is you're painting. Now, I don't know why this works. Let me grab, I'll grab this dry brush. This is my Rosemary & Co. large dry brush. There we go. And I don't know why this works. I have a theory. Well, I don't have a theory. I heard someone, Model Making Guru, one time had a theory that he thinks, and it sounds as good as any to me, he was talking about that he wonders if it has to do with aligning the metal flakes, the pigments, that if they're aligned, then they look much better than if they're, painted on with a brush where there's not as even. So instead of just a normal painting thing, I'm just going to do a very rough initial dry brush. And normally when you're painting stuff on like this, you don't want to keep going over it. But with this, I like to go over it a couple of times because it's almost like it buffs it out a little bit and gets the pigments aligned. Now there's a point where you'll feel the paint getting sticky, and that's when it's telling you, hey, don't mess with me, dude. That's the point when it's telling you that it's as good as it's going to get. You need to let it dry. You can come back to it later, but you want to let it dry. But I'm just going through here real roughly, and you'll note that I didn't thin this down. If I thin it down, I could put it in a lot more coats, but one, it takes much more effort to cover, and two, I still think it leaves it looking streaky. So this way, I get on a good coat, and then what I'm going to do, let me get the end of it here real quick like that. And I apologize if I'm going out of focus. This is kind of like dancing with a bear. Once you start, you can't stop on your own. Got to go with what the paint dictates. But let me get these on here. All right, that's good enough for now. Let me hit it with the hairdryer and then show you the next step. All right, now that's dried off with the hairdryer. I just keep my hairdryer sitting here right here on my lap so I can get to it quick. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to just start putting it on like this. Just that stippling motion like that. And then you can kind of just buff it around And this is going to kind of bring the metallics together. This is where, I don't want to say this is where the magic happens, because I don't know that it's, you could describe it as magic. It's not that impressive. It's not like, you know, Houdini or something. But this is where it starts moving away from a streaky look to a metallic, I think, look. And you can switch up colors. I could have gone to a different color silver here. I could have gone to the color right out of the bottle rather than having the black mixed in. But this just really gives it, in my opinion, a very metallic look. Hang on and let me get this done. And because the paint is going on neat and it's fairly thick, it covers really well. But unlike most paints, I find that with metallics, they don't really clog up the detail when you do it this way. I'm sure there's a point where you could, but somewhere along the way, I figured out how to avoid that, mostly. I'm sure if you looked close enough, you'd go, yeah, that dude doesn't know what he's talking about. But that's one of the benefits. I was joking with somebody, I said that's one of the benefits of my eyesight not being as good as it used to be. I think I'm becoming a lot better model than I probably am, because I can't see what I'm doing half the time. So I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that looks great, man. And everybody else is like, poor guy, he can't see anything. It's like my wife and I have been married for, this year will be 34 years, and loved every minute of it. Only regret is we didn't know each other sooner. But anyway, I always tell her, you're beautiful, and she goes, and your eyes are going bad. So, but both are true. My eyes are going bad, and she is beautiful. But anyway, let me just get that right there. And I'm sorry, this is going all out of focus and probably jumping around. That's, you know, this is why I'm not really much of a I can't even say it, movie guy, filming dude. Now, I'm not worried about this area up here. It's a little more janky, because that's the area that's going to be facing up. But, all right, so I've got that on there. Now let me give that a chance to dry, and we'll move forward with the next step. All right, now I'm going to do some dry brushing, and I'm going to be using this 2 Thin Coats Mithril blade. It's like Stormhost silver or any other bright silver color. You can see the difference between the two here. If you want more difference, obviously, then your base should have more black in it or be a darker silver. And this dry brush that I'm using, it's the one I used before. I didn't clean it at all. I didn't stick it in water. I didn't wash it. I just brushed it off on my texture palette until I got it, reasonably clean. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of the other stuff left on there. I'm going to work that off. And this time I'm going to do more of a traditional dry brush. I'm really going to work that off of there. And I'm just going to start going in. And I'm not worried if I give it a lot more coverage, more than just the edges, because what I'm doing is I'm just kind of buffing up that look. I'm just brightening up edges, brightening up the flat areas. And like I said, if you want a lot more contrast, then make sure your base is darker. I'm going to do this again here in just a minute, as you'll see. And this is mostly in real time. The breaks between jump cuts are fairly short, no more than a couple of minutes between most of them. So it's not like I'm doing this a little bit at a time, and it's taking several hours. I've actually got to get this video in within about an hour and a half time frame before my wife and daughter, come back from grocery shopping for the day, so I can help them get the groceries in and spend some time with them when they're back here at the house. So this is a fairly quick process. You don't have to do it this quick, but it's something that I think, hey, just get through this because I'm going to dirty this up. So anyway, I did some dry brushing there. It didn't make a huge amount of difference, but it made an amount of difference. That's what I was looking for. I wanted to just brighten up some of those edges. You can kind of see it glinting along here. But now I'm going to go and take one more step. Now you've seen me do this before, but I'm going to take that mithril blade and I'm going to sponge on. Pretty good application. Do you see the... I don't know if it's showing on camera. Whoops, I got a little too much there. It's all right. I'll live with it. Do you see the texture that it's putting on there? It's making it look worn, scraped, and things like that. Now, for some reason, I don't know why. I'm sure someone who understands light and color and lots more things than my Tallahassee Community College degree ever taught me. But for some reason, when I put Nuln oil over this, or a dark shade, it darkens the dark silver, but it's like the lighter silver still shows through. So it really brings out the contrast between the two. It's harder to see it here, the contrast, but when that Nuln oil is applied, it just kind of pops. And you've seen me do this before, but it works on gun barrels, it works on engines, it works on exhausts. It's even if you don't have to use silvers for this. This kind of thing works with distressing paint, especially like olive drab military colors. Man, this works great with those. But you can keep adding texture until you get whatever level it is that you're looking for, to just make the metal look worn and scratched and used and all of that. So let me get this finished up. Now I'm going to take some Citadel Nuln oil, and this is the old Nuln oil. There's not a lot of difference between the old and the new, but one thing I do like about the old is it doesn't do as good a job of pulling away from the flat surfaces. And sometimes you want it to pull away from the flat surfaces, but every now and then you don't, or I don't. And this is one of those occasions. I like some of the staining that happens. So I'm just applying this all over like that, just fairly heavily. I'm not doing as I've heard one creator say. He jokes about, just bucket it right on there, which is a great description for really getting it on there. But I'm being a little more judicious, but I'm still really getting it on there. I'm not trying to be neat about it. Not worried too much if it pools in a few areas. As it dries, I'll check it, go around and check it to make sure. But if you can't find any of the old Nuln oil, if you get some of the big jar of Vallejo black wash, it works more like the old Nuln oil, almost identical to it. And if you get the big jar, I think I've shown it before. It's a bucket. It's pretty big. It'll last you for a long time. Let me get this applied, and then I'll dry it with the hair dryer, and we'll go from there. See how it dulled the darker silver down, but the brighter silver retained? It gives it even more contrast. It was funny. I was really paying attention when I was putting it on, and it looks like the wash pulls away from the brighter silver. I don't know if it's because it's higher up or if it's glossier or what, but you can really see the texture there. And this is starting to look like to me, it's looking like a jet nozzle. But next step. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that mithril blade, that light silver, but this time I'm going to be much more deliberate about hitting edges. If you wanted to, and I've done this, if you wanted to, this would not be a bad place to actually do some painted highlights, like especially along like where those, between those two panels right there or something like that. If you really wanted this to pop, you could do that. But I'm just focusing on edges and bolts and things like this. Now, if you're doing this and you're not getting the results you want, consider putting on, boy, did you hear that whistle? Consider, I can't do it now. Sound like that character in Winnie the Pooh. Anyway, remember the gopher or whatever he was? Anyway, consider, yeah, there's a tangent. Consider putting on another coat of the non-oil, of the wash, because that will darken it down even more. So when you do the silver over it, there'll be some contrast. And you can also just streak the silver like that, and it's going to give you even more texture and contrast on the surface of this. So don't be afraid to just riff it as you go along. That's what I was talking about earlier, that sometimes I never really do it the same way twice. I kind of look at how it's going for this particular piece and just kind of adjust from there. Also, if you've got any areas, now that I'm thinking about it, if you've got any areas where, like, see the staining right there? Now, this is going to be up against the underside of the jet, so I don't really care about it, but if you got any staining from the wash and you want to get rid of it, you just dry brush over it until you tone it back or completely cover it. But you can cover up a whole lot of stuff with just this dry brushing. Now, to further increase contrast, I'm going to go back to my non-oil, and I'm going to just use this old beat-up, super cheap liner brush. And I'm going to put some more shade in, but this time it's going to be a much more precise application. Where I'll put it into the panel lines and along areas like this. Just really putting it in, maybe one or two coats even, or two coats or more. Put it around the bolt details, because at this point I've darkened those areas and I've brought back some highlights, but I really want to make the contrast. I really want it to pop. So by adding this in as a last step, there's that whistle again. Why when I start whistling? You guys are like, can I pay for this every month? Yeah, sorry about that. But I'm going to go back and I'm just going to put this in, and it's just really going to increase the contrast. Now, there's other things that you can do to make it look, give it more soot effects, and I'm most likely going to be showing that in the, maybe in a YouTube video, maybe in a Patreon video, but you'll see that this is not the end of what I do. I'll do more, but I'm running up on, this is probably enough time for this video. And I'm about at a stopping point for this stage, for, you know, getting, this is basically the base painting, for the later stuff to come. But one time somebody asked me, they said, how do you spend 50, 60, 70 hours on a model? Well, it's doing stuff like this, you know. You could just paint it, dry brush it, and move on. But I like doing it because this is fun, seeing how far can I push it. But anyway, I'll just go around the rest of this and do this application, and then we'll take a look at it and close the video out. One quick thought. Sometimes in areas like this, these little recessed areas, instead of doing a very precise application, I'll go real heavy right in there, because once that dries, it will just add to the contrast, just like that. All right, I said I was done, but I'm going to, as I close out, I'm just going to start doing this because I tried it. I thought it looked cool. I'm just going to do some more edge highlighting with that mithril silver. And it's just going to bring out those edges even just a little more. Consider this an optional step. I'm going to go around and do it. I'm going to have to wrap it up because my wife and daughter are on their way home from the store, so I'm going to need to be ready to help them get in groceries. And I brings in the groceries, they put them away, because if I put them away, things go all over the place. But as you see, just a couple of colors in the shade, and you can come up with some really cool looking results. Now, if you think this is not a cool looking result, come up with a way that you think looks cool. There's so many ways to approach this and do this. The main thing is, as I always say, have fun. So I'm having fun, so I'm going to keep doing this till they get home. Then when we get done putting the groceries away, and maybe after a nap, I'll finish this up. As always, thanks so much for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And with all that being said, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.